What is up, my lovely people in Blue Tablet land? So for today's video, guys, I'm going to be drawing y'all this Tombstone. If that's something y'all think y'all might be interested in, stick around and let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is draw an arch to start the top of it. And usually tombstones come in all shapes and sizes. I mean, there's some that are rectangular and then some that are arch shaped like this. So I kind of like this shape because, it has more of a cooler look, I guess, as opposed to the regular rectangular shape that it has. When I was drawing this, I was like, man, the tombstone's kind of one of the most boring things for this whole drawing playlist. So I was like, how can I incorporate some sort of humor into the drawing? And if the people watching on did not catch on from the very start of this video, maybe I will probably see it as the video progresses. So I'll keep the suspense a little bit till I start actually writing it out. That's kind of a clue. So I figured I'd do some moss on it to give it that aged kind of look that as of the tombstone's been sitting in this graveyard for a little while. And figured, actually initially what I wanted to do is I kind of wanted to draw like a hand coming out from the mud, but then I was like, you know what, that might get a little bit too long, and my arms and hands were really starting to cramp up at this point. And I think it was because of some work that I did around the house yesterday. So I was like, I think this is a perfect drawing video for today, given the fact that, my arms were sore. So when I was doing the detail line art on the edge of the tombstone, I was kind of wondering what should I put for the actual saying on it. I mean, usually, they have names and they have like the date of birth of when the person lived, or rather when they were born or when they passed away. And figured I'll just stick with the the acronym that's usually put on the tombstone, which is rest in peace. But when I seen it for the very first time when I'd gone with my mom for a funeral, I was like, why did they put RIP on the tombstone? Is that something that they're trying to be funny? And I was like, what does RIP stand for? She's like, it's not RIP, it stands for rest in peace. So I was like, well, I guess in this scenario, my hand is definitely going to be resting in peace after I'm done with this whole playlist. So that's kind of my inside joke for the whole drawing the tombstone in this particular one. So this is one of the ways you can give detail to the tombstone. And the other thing is you can just kind of duplicate the shape what I did for the moss all over the tombstone, so it kind of looks like, there are chips of the tombstone that have kind of fallen off, so that when you kind of do the shading, it kind of looks like there's some depth to the actual stone and it's not just a flat surface. But I mean, you'll see once I start the shading what I mean. I didn't really get carried away too much, but that's just a suggestion, like, if you guys want to go a little extra and try something different. So now here we have the line art, and I figured for the colors, just keep it simple, do some gray for the actual tombstone. And then for the moss, I figured I'll go with a nice mossy green, or something that looks close enough to moss green. Boom, 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 boom. I don't know why I felt the need to make those noises, but it felt good for the time. Some brown for the mud. And now for the shading, I'm going to actually show you all two techniques what I did. So the first one I tried at 30%. And what I mean by that is I took the line art for new people that are following on and just reduced the opacity to about 30% and turned on the clipping mask. And then what ends up happening is you get an automatic color or a shade of what the shadow would be at 30% for the color that's underneath it. So when I was doing the shading over here for the text, it actually gives that embossed kind of look to the text, almost like as if it was chiseled into the tombstone. so it has that feeling of depth and it's not like flat on the actual surface. So that's just one of the techniques. And then for the other use of shadows through the illustration, that's just to show again, like, the feeling of depth when you take two different colors, like a lighter and a darker shade of that color. And pretty much, you can just experiment with this, It doesn't have to be exactly the way I'm doing it. You don't have to put the shadows in the exact same spots. If it's just a cartoon kind of an illustration, it's supposed to look funny, it's supposed to be cartoony. And if the shadow doesn't come out exactly like a realistic one, doesn't matter. You can just say it was just a cartoony version of a Tombstone or whatever it is you're drawing. But so that's what I was doing over here, just give that embossed look. And I believe the same look can also be done in Photoshop, and I think one of the filters on text, actually it's under the text application, where you have the option to select an embossed look. So, and then here you just have to do it manually. Another tool that you can use in Procreate is the selection tool, and that becomes really cool to use, or very beneficial, I would say, is if you're trying to get shadow in a particular spot and you don't want it to kind of go all over the place, so you can kind of select the area you want and just drop the color in. Or the other option is you can use the clipping mask, and then you can just shade in that particular area and not have to worry about it, like as I said, going all over the place. And excuse me for any unfortunate background noise that may show up, but just want to throw that in there. Gosh, doesn't background noise annoy me when I'm trying to make these videos. But yeah, but as I said, just do the shadowing the best you can, and if it turns out fine, good. And if it does not, just start over and don't get disheartened or sad that it's not coming out the way you wanted it. So now here for the second option, what I did was I did the exact same technique, except this time I kept the opacity at about 40%. So you can clearly see the difference in the lighter shadow as opposed to the darker shadow. And this is just an extra step I did because this was not a very lengthy video. So I figured I'd show it to you guys more in depth over here. And actually I was thinking for a future video, maybe after I'm done with this playlist, maybe I'll do something that shows the different uses and application of shadows to the best of my ability, and hopefully that helps somebody else out there who is a new artist, and that way they can help themselves better their skills and get better one day at a time. The most easiest way I feel to learn shading is by observing from real life. So when I was in art school, like 20 plus some years ago, there was a day when the professor told us that we're going to do an assignment to learn shadows. And what he had was these thermocol shapes of cylinders, circles, or spheres, and a box. And he kind of arranged it on this cloak or some fabric in the middle of the room. And then he had a light shining from one side, and he had the whole class try to draw it. And then he kind of repositioned the light. And what ends up happening is when you observe in real life, you kind of understand properly how lights and shadows actually work. And then our assignment was, to just practice on a specific shape, whether it be a sphere or a cylinder. But the takeaway is, if you feel like you're struggling, it's just easy to try something from still life and something that's real. So like for me, what I do as an example is I have this desk light that's sitting on my table and a little box. If I'm ever confused or not sure how something will look in a shadow form, I'll just use that and use it as practice. And that's one way to teach yourself on how shadows work and all that. But I guess that's enough of shadow talk for today, I guess, because maybe you'll probably bored of me talking about shadows, but that's it. But anyway, as I said, getting on with the whole shadows for this part of the illustration, I just, winged it and just kind of did it how I felt it looked cool to have this cartoony look to this tombstone. It was not a realistic looking one, so So however you all choose to do the shadows in this is totally up to you. Totally up to what you all feel looks cool. And as I said, if it doesn't look nice, you can always start over and start from the beginning or try something different and all that. But all in all, I think the tombstone is coming along. I don't know, something about a tombstone kind of really makes you remember that that life is not very long and you got to make the best of it while you're while you're here. Anyway, coming back to the illustration now. So for the highlights, I didn't really do a whole lot because it's kind of stone. So I just figured out color in the moss or highlight the moss. Give a little bit of shine up here for the tombstone. Because in reality, I don't think you would have that much of a big glow on rock. It would just be like a direct sunlight kind of look, which would kind of make it a little lighter in shade. You wouldn't actually see an actual shine like if it was on actual metal. So I just did that. And as I said, since it's just a cartoony version of a tombstone, it's just an implication of where actually the lights and shadow would actually go. Do another little blotch over here. These illustrations really have been fun, guys, and I really hope you all have enjoyed as well up until now and followed along, and let me know what you all have thought so far of the other ones that I've put out and which one you liked or didn't like. But yeah, anyway, guys, I guess we'll go ahead and wrap this up and say thank you to all my followers for sticking on and following along, and to all the new people. So till the next time, guys, take care of yourselves, and I will see y'all in the next one. Bye for now.